Hi, I'm Lindsay and I'm here to help you with your garden planning. We are a homesteading from scratch family and our desire is to help people that are in a similar boat than us. We're no experts, but as we take a deep dive into homesteading, we want to share with you what we've been learning along the way. In this video, it's all about garden planning, how to plan, things to consider, and some resources to help you. Spring is coming and we have a 4,500 square foot garden space area and a fruit orchard on the way, and it's time to plan. I'm going to be sharing with you the top 5 things you need to know as you start your garden planning journey. After I share the 5 things, I will show you exactly how I plan my own garden, and I will share some very helpful resources from the beginning. After I share the top 5 things, I will share exactly how I plan my own garden, and I will share some very helpful resources for people beginning their gardening journey. So let's get started. Hey guys, welcome to Brown's Family Homestead. In this video, I'm going to break down garden planning down to the simplest form for you to understand. There are so many different variables that go into gardening. You can hear 20 different opinions about something and it is just going to look different. Gardening is not black and white. So be encouraged with that. It is not black and white. There is a gray area. When you read something, you could read something that's the complete opposite opinion, and you just kind of have to filter through and discern what you're going to take and what you're not going to take. And it also, there's different factors that go into this of your zone and all of that. But I am going to help you because in 2017 to 2020, we lived in a subdivision. We had 4 smaller raised beds and we began our gardening journey and we got chickens, and then we moved in 2020 to Homestead from scratch. And I wanted to make this channel to help people that were beginners or starting something from scratch and they weren't an expert, that you don't have people around you that are experts. And by no means are we experts, but we are learning as we go, and we want to help you with that information that we're learning. So if we're taking all these different videos and compiling it into one thing, we want to save you the time and just share it with you in one video and make it quick and simple. So the number one thing you need to consider when you're garden planning is you need to know your space. It's just the basics. Look outside your window. What gets good sunlight? Where am I going to have my garden? And what kind of garden am I going to have? Am I going to have raised beds? Am I going to have it in the ground? Am I going to have them in containers? A lot of plants do well in containers. I think that's becoming a bigger thing now. You can grow lettuce in containers, tomatoes, peas, potatoes, raspberries, blueberries. We have 24 containers coming for our garden, and I'll share more with that later. But it makes it a lot easier because you can control the soil with raised beds in containers. So if blueberries, they like a more acidic soil, we can do that. We can go get a more acidic soil and put it in it and not have to worry about other plants that really don't do well with that soil. So it just makes it easier to control. But if your ground, if you test the pH and it's a good soil for planting, then you save money. So just figure out what kind of beds you're wanting to do. And if it's getting good sunlight, what zone you're in is the number one thing. You need to know what plants do really well in your state depending on the climate. And you need to know, are you going to start off with seeds or are you going to start off with plants? And you can do both. Again, not black and white, you could do both. I'm going to directly sow some seeds and then I'm going to buy some plants. So we don't have room in our house to seed start. I did that last year with I planted, I don't even know, 20 hollyhocks, and we had no room in our house. So until I get a greenhouse, I won't be seed starting. But seed starting is significantly cheaper than buying plants at a greenhouse. But if you're a beginner and it's overwhelming with the thought of seed starting because you don't know how to do that, just go and buy some plants if it's in the budget. Number 2 is knowing what to plant and the spacing. So this is the hardest thing because personally, I want an answer. I don't want to go in blindly. I want to know, what am I planting? How many am I planting? How far do they need to go? I need to go out and measure the bed and make sure everything's perfect. But that's the thing with planting, is it is completely dependent on, for example, what is your family eating and consuming? So if you're a beginner gardener, only plant what your family eats. Don't start off getting things that are like these crazy variety of carrots. Stick to things that you know your family eats. And then with spacing's complicated because if you look on a lot of seed packets, it'll say the spacing is determined by the rows, which they're figuring that you're doing it in ground and you're creating a row to harvest in between each thing. So a lot of spacing isn't even correct based off of how your garden is laid out. So that makes it complicated. And then A big thing, a variable, has to do with if you plan on pruning your vegetables or not. So say you have a tomato plant and you don't plan on pruning it ever, it's obviously going to be a lot bigger. But if you plan on, let's say, a head of kale, you let it go and it's big, obviously you're going to want those more spaced out because you want big leaves of kale. If you wanted baby leaves, then obviously you're going to cut them down sooner and you don't need that big of a space. Does that make sense? So it's dependent on like what you want and what your plan is for your garden. Also, spacing is dependent. If you put things too close together, they're going to get really crowded and suck the nutrients from each other and not thrive. But if you leave them too far apart, then you're going to have weed issues. So again, it's kind of hard to say. I have seen so many videos on TikTok, even with carrots, where it says the spacing needs to be so many inches apart from each other. But then I just watched a video and a girl was digging a trench and sprinkling them all in the trench and covering it. So it's going to be different. Just Google what different options there are and try to find a median, because I don't have an answer. These videos are hard to make because it's hard to tell you this is what it looks like, because it's all different. And another thing to think about is with a tomato plant, you're going to be harvesting on and off and getting a bunch of fruit or vegetables from whatever plant you're doing. If it's like a tomato, if it's like a pepper, you're going to get more than one. If it's a beet, like you're planting a beet seed and you're only going to get one beet. So that's something to consider too when you're looking at these vegetables. Are you going to get a continuous harvest, or is it just a one-time deal? Another question to ask yourself is if you're going to be preserving anything. So that's just dependent on how much fruit and vegetables you are planting. If you plan on canning or dehydrating or freezing, that's going to be just personal to you of like how much plants and vegetables you want. Number 3 is going to be companion planting, which can be a very overwhelming topic, and flowers to plant in your garden beds that will help them thrive. So companion planting is essentially finding friends that your plants like and planting them next to that, because it can improve their taste, it can repel pests, it can improve the growth of them. There's a lot of different things that go into it that can better off your yield when you're gardening, when you plant them next to things that they like. And if you're confused on how to do that, it is a simple Google search. Google, what do cucumbers like to be planted by? And you'll get a list of things they like to be planted by. And you can also do that with flowers. So there are different flowers that you can plant next to certain vegetables. And I mean, you're pretty much safe to say marigold does really well with most everything. So in all of our garden beds, I'm planting flowers in each one of them because it does a similar thing compared to companion plants. So it can repel pests away, it can help improve the taste and growth of each thing. So that's something that we're going to be doing. If that's too advanced, forget the flowers. Just find the plant's friends. Another thing to consider is a trellis for items that need a trellis. So that all of this is just an easy Google search. You're going to write down things that you like to eat or you would like to grow, and you can easily research, does this need a trellis or not? And then put it on a checklist. No, it does not. Yes, it does. And if it does, figure out what kind of trellises are easy for that. So for example, for us, we're going to have pole beans and sugar snap peas and cucumbers. And so for ours, we have a cattle fence that we're going to be putting around to make an archway that they can climb up. So just get those before you actually are planting, because odds are they're going to grow really fast and then you're probably not going to get to it in time. And the things that can kind of get like, okay, this is getting a little confusing, is when you do have that archway, is that archway going to be blocking the plants that are on the other side of it? So if I have an arch right here, I have little plants right here. Are they getting sunlight or are they not getting sunlight? So you have to plant according to like which direction is the sun and which way your garden beds are facing. So where things need to be planted, like tomatoes grow really tall, so you probably don't have anything that if it's going to shade that, you know what I'm saying? So that's something to consider as well. Number 4 is log your garden. So I actually just recently paid for MI Gardener's garden log book, and so you can like write down every single thing. You can draw your garden on it, you can log everything. And so it's super important that if you're going into this, a lot of this is just trial and error, and you're never going to know how much to plant until you actually plant it and you know, was it enough or was it not enough? And so a lot of it's trial and error, and it's good to log those things so you don't forget. Or if you have pests on a certain plant, to write that down so you know the following year, what do I need to do to help prevent that from happening. Number 5 is having an arsenal of pest control things. So buying different things for different problems for your plants, because when things happen, they happen really quickly, and they can kill your plants very quickly if it's like a specific type of bug or disease. And so to have things already on hand where you don't have to wait hours or a day to address an issue is a really good idea. So I'll show you what I have. So this is good for like Japanese beetles, slugs, snails, grasshoppers, pill bugs, stuff like that. So you put it in a pantyhose and you roll it up in a ball and you just dust it on the leaves. You don't want to get it on like any flowering parts of the plant, but just the places where they're having an issue. And then we have some neem oil, which is good for any little critters that are chewing or sucking on the leaves or the plant itself. So some neem oil on hand always. That's good for a lot of different things. It's good for rust, powdery mildew, white flies, spider mites. So get some neem oil on hand. Okay, now I'm gonna tell you how to do this and walk this out. So you're gonna get a piece of paper and you're gonna make a list of what you like to eat and what you wanna grow. So just make a generic, I want tomatoes, I want peas, I want potatoes, stuff like that. Just write a list down. After you do that, you're going to research each thing in their companion plants. So if you have tomatoes written down, do tomatoes, dash, tomatoes like to be planted by X, Y, and Z. And so do that with each and every one of your plants. Then draw your layout of your garden, what you're dreaming for. And this will help you determine what needs to go in what bed and how many beds you have. So I'll give you an example of my rough draft of, so I had, here. It's very, like a very rough sketch of things, and I like was crossing things out and moving things over, but we have 6 beds. And so I was like, I like this over here, but this needs a trellis. So you're moving things around a lot, but once you get it planned out, you're good to, it's smooth sailing. So you're gonna start brainstorming what you want in each bed based off of what you just wrote down for their companion plants. And then based off of how many plants you get, just get whatever you think, okay? Because this is the thing, you're gonna grow stuff. You might not have a good harvest this year. You might not get anything. You might get an overproduction and it was way too much. It's just a learning curve. So like, just have grace for yourself. Just pick up whatever you think your family will eat and try it out, and then learn, and the next year you can adjust. And then spacing, obviously we talked about that. That's a very hard thing to talk about. So get on TikTok. Honestly, there's a lot of TikTok recommendations. Get on YouTube. Look at what people are doing in your similar zone, or things that worked for people who are experienced, like with the carrots and digging them in a trench and sprinkling them in a trench instead of like individually planting each carrot. You know, like that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna try it out, and maybe I'll have them spaced too, and like try and trial and error and see which one works best. So here is an example of what my garden layout looks like. I have a couple little containers blocked off because we got rid of those, but this is what mine looks like. We have raspberries up here in containers, blueberries down here in containers, corn, potatoes, and watermelon are all going to be in ground, and we're just going to test it out because we have clay soil. So I'm not even sure if those are going to do good, but this is the fun of it, is just seeing what does well. And then we have 6 beds. We have the cattle fencing trellises, and then I have a list of everything that's going to go in each bed. And now I feel much more prepared when I do pick up my plants, that I have things figured out. But this is what it looked like before. It's just, I don't know if it's gonna work. It's a rough draft, So you're gonna go through a lot of paper, but once you just sit down and do it for a little bit, you'll get it. So before I share my resources, I wanna share something that was really meaningful to me. If you're going into gardening with almost a chore mindset, like this is going to be a chore, it's probably not going to be enjoyable, you probably shouldn't do it. If you're getting into gardening and this is going to be a hobby and something that's going to bring some like fulfillment and passion into your life, then you're already a step ahead. So make your garden space something that you absolutely love, that is authentic to you, that you enjoy being around. And so someone who does that really well is Roots and Refuge, Jessica, and this is one of my favorite books. She is passionate about creating a space where like she has coffee and tea every morning in her garden, and it's like her little refuge. And so having a spot where you're actually loving the space that you're in, whatever that looks like to you, is so important. And it's not going to be this burden over your life, it's going to be something that will give you life. So that brings me to my next point, is Roots and Refuge. She has this book that you can get on, all these you can get on Amazon, and I'll include them in the description. They're on my Amazon storefront. This is my number one, for sure. The amount of knowledge in this book it's crazy. It was so helpful. Number two, actually, I'm gonna go in order to what ones I like best, is this one. This one's also packed on like how many plants per person, which again is very hard to determine that, but there is so much goodness in this for anyone who doesn't really know what they're doing, which was like me. So I still don't know what I'm doing, but I feel like I know enough to make this video. And then raised garden beds for beginners. This was really helpful. It's just, this is very basic if you're gonna do raised beds. If you're not gonna do raised beds, then probably don't do it. And then this one, this is very good. It's just less informative than these, but good in a very brief way. So it's called The Rooted Life by Justin Rhodes. So anyways, these are my holy grails. I've learned a lot through these books, and I will put them in the description. So if you want to buy them, highly recommend it. But I hope this empowered you that gardening looks different for everybody. You might plant differently, you might space differently, you might prune, some people might not, some people don't weed, some people do, some people mulch over their beds, some people don't. It's all different. So have fun experimenting and have fun in failure, because next year you can learn and you can try not to fail again. It's an ongoing thing that's just fun. So remove the pressure off of yourself that like your garden has to thrive and look beautiful. If it feeds your family, you're winning. If your kids are happy helping you, you're winning. If you're happy and this is giving you life, you're winning. So nonetheless, I hope this helped you and brought it down to its simplest form, and happy gardening. Spring is almost here. We make videos every single week. Let me know if this helped you. I would love to know if this helped you and encouraged you that you can do it. And I'm excited to bring you guys along on our whole gardening journey this year. So thanks for watching.